Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This week has been a good reading week, but it was also the last week of term. Yeah, the less said about that, the better at this point in time. I am talking about the books that I read from the 17th until the 24th of June. We're in June. I genuinely forgot that there for a moment. And I read 6 things, 5 of which were from the same series and 5 of which are hockey romances. And I will preface this by saying later today I'm going to the hockey again for the 3rd time in 3 days because these are the only home games that are playing while I'm actually on break. So if I sound tired and I look tired, it's not on the end of term break, it's because I've been running around like a crazy person backwards and forwards between the O'Brien and Ice House, because of course I have. I was really excited because I got to take my dad, my sister and my brother-in-law to their first Australian ice hockey game last night. We had a really great time. It was good fun. And yes, now I'm going by myself today. But that is not book talk. Let's talk about the books that I read. I'll start with the one that is not related to the series first, and that is Hex by Anna Hackett. This is the 6th book in the Sentinel security series and the last one in this series, at least for now, I think. This one follows Jet, or Hex, who is the hacker for Sentinel security. She is their digital expert and totally awesome, and it is her relationship with Kane, who is a CIA spy. He is also awesome. He's popped up throughout the series in various capacities. They are both mutually attracted to one another, but also Jet finds Kane very annoying. But when some very important technology is stolen, Kane comes to Sentinel security and Jet in particular to ask for her help in trying to stop the sale of this technology, which means she needs to go undercover as the person who stole the technology and try and figure out who is trying to buy it. And they have to work together, so you have some forced proximity. It is fast-paced, there's lots of action, explosions, things like that. It's just a really enjoyable series. And I'm very intrigued to see where Anna Hackett goes next, because I think she'll be continuing in this shared world, which is part of Norcross and Sentinel and some of her other series, but I don't know where she's going yet, so I'm excited about that. And then I started reading the Rookie Rebels series by Kate Meader, which is a spin-off of another series of hockey romances that she's read, but I started with the Rookie Rebels, so I'm just going to keep reading them, and I'll probably finish them next week because I'm over halfway through the series, and then I might go back to the previous books. But you get a lot of the information about what happened in that series through these books anyway. So the first one is Good Guy, and it is about Levi Hunt, who is the oldest rookie in the NHL because he was playing hockey, but instead of going into the draft, he went into the military and was a Green Beret. And so he's retired from service now and he comes back to play in the NHL. And of course, everyone's eating it up because he's got a good story, but he doesn't really want to share his story with anyone. And it is his romance with Jordan Cook, who is a sports journalist who also happens to be the wife of one of his best friends who died in the line of duty. And he's always been quite abrupt and aloof with her, and that was because he actually fell in love with her and had to watch her fall in love with his best friend. And so he kind of keeps her at arm's distance. But she's given the job of doing a story on him, and she's given it because she knows him and she has the connection to him, and throughout the course of the book they fall in love, and it's great. Really enjoyed it, but of course it does deal with the death of a best friend slash spouse, historically off page, and a little bit of miscommunication between the two of them initially. The second book in the series is InstaCrush, and this one is about the most adorable, fast-talking sweetheart of a cinnamon roll himbo that you will ever find. You have Theo, who is one of the rookies. He has only been playing for I think 4 or 5 years, and part of that time he was on the injured reserve list because he had a ruptured aneurysm, which he then had to build his way back from. And he is a total sweetheart. He just never stops talking, and he ends up having a one-night stand with Elle, who is also former military. She used to serve with Levi, and she, for a period of time, was staying at Levi's house. We know that she's running away from something, that something being her family, who are con artists, and she's trying to get away from that life. They end up having this one-night stand, and Elle ends up pregnant. And when I tell you Theo's reaction to finding out that Elle is pregnant is one of the best reactions ever, he just is all in from the minute go. And by all in, I mean he is completely down with whatever decision Elle makes with regards to being pregnant and having the baby, and he is also determined to be there for her while she's making that process, but without overcrowding her. But he does things like buys her things for nausea and just checks in on her and just is around and is present. And I absolutely loved him because I'm not a surprise baby person, But this one worked really well in this context and was just so fitting for Theo's character. And Elle was just a really great character because she was just trying so hard to not follow in the footsteps of her family and just to start something new, but not really knowing where she was going. And then this happens and she's thrown into it and she has to start making decisions. I did talk about this a little bit more in a members vlog because I was reading it the same weekend as my sister's baby shower, which was very fitting, but great book. Book 3 in the series is Man Down, and this is about Gunnar, who is not quite a rookie. He was playing for quite a while. He actually played with Theo on Theo's original team, and they all ended up on the Chicago team. And he took a break from playing after the death of his wife and his 2 children. They were all involved in a car accident. Gunnar was the only one to survive, so that does happen historically off page, but there are a couple of detailed flashback scenes as Gunnar is working his way through this, so be aware of that if you are reading the story. After the death of his family, he kind of went into hiding. He lived in a cabin, he went all recluse, and he's slowly been drawn back into the game and is trying to figure out his place. And at the very start of the book, he is still texting his wife's old mobile number or phone number because it's still open and he just finds it therapeutic to talk to her until one day someone replies back. That someone is Sadie, and it turns out that Gunnar's wife's mobile number has been recycled, and at first, you know, the two joke about the phone company being really cheap and just recycling things, but then they actually start talking and they don't really know who the other person is, but they have this conversation. The other person on the end of the line is Sadie. She works as a personal assistant to an influencer who is interesting. Sadie also comes into guardianship of her stepsister, who she has not seen since her stepsister was a baby because she has fallen out with her family. When Sadie's father is in prison, she takes guardianship, and she is trying to work through this relationship with a teenager who just doesn't understand what happened and why Sadie left, and takes everything out on her because she's going through this very traumatic experience. Sadie and Gunnar's paths cross because Sadie's sister is taking part in a holiday hockey program, and her sister badmouths Sadie to Gunnar. He has a go at Sadie, but then realizes that he's been played by a teenager, and the two end up talking and working their way through things. And of course, one of them figures out who the other person is initially. And there isn't that long of a period between one person finding out and the other person finding out, which was good because I don't, like, that can be hit or miss for me. I really liked the dynamic between these two characters and the way that they come from very different worlds and they find their way to each other. Book 4 in the series is Foreplayer. This is Cal and Mia's book. Cal is another injured reserve player coming off from that list and returning to the game, so he's training to get back to his peak. And it is his relationship with his best friend's sister, Mia, who is also a hockey player who is training to get into the Olympic hockey team. Mia is a fantastic hockey player. She's been playing for years, but something happened in college and she stopped playing to the consternation of her brother. Her brother happens to be the captain of the Rookie Rebels. They end up training together and spending more time with one another and falling for one another. I should say the two do not start off on the best of notes because Cal and Mia are both at the wedding of one of the other players, and Cal forces his date's hand into breaking up with him very publicly at this wedding, and Mia thinks it's ridiculous, and so she plays a prank on him and puts the story up online under pseudonyms and gets people to weigh in on the situation, and he figures out very quickly that it's her. And in fact, that's what opens up the lines of communication between them and they become friends first. I do want to content warning, so spoilers. Spoiler tag will go away in a minute. One of Mia's ex-boyfriends leaked intimate photos of her, and then she was basically gaslit by him, by her college, and also by his mother, who happened to work. She's one of the heads of the Women's Hockey League, and they basically blacklisted her. And so she couldn't play. No one would pick her for their team. And so she had to stop playing hockey. And so a large portion of the book deals with her coming back from that. And it's really quite stressful for her, obviously. And then the 5th book in the series is Dear Roomie, and this is about Reed Durand, who is a recent transfer from Montreal, who is very prickly, very grumpy, and doesn't really intend on making friends. The whole way that we've met him through the series, he's been sarcastic and borderline rude to the point of keeping everyone at a distance. And it turns out he is actually an absolute cinnamon roll of a hero who has just spent his entire life being pitted against his brother, who is naturally talented at hockey, and Reed has to work at it. And his stepfather has been training them since they were very young to be competitive with one another. And so he just constantly feels this pressure, and he is always training. Everything is really neat and organized and ordered because that's the way that he needs to function. He has certain rules during the season of what he will and won't do. And he also keeps people at arm's length because they can be a distraction. Because after every single game, he gets a phone call from his stepfather, usually telling him what he's done wrong. And so he's constantly trying to prove that he can do the job. And so he's working through that. And then it is his relationship with Kennedy, who is a side character we've met in previous books. She was a bartender, but she's lost her job and she is now living in her car and is jobless. And she ends up helping Reed rescue a dog from the ocean. And Reed decides to keep the dog. He's never been allowed to keep a dog before. He calls the dog Bucky after Bucky Barnes, and the Marvel references in this book, top notch. But because he's away for so many games, he hires Kennedy to help look after the dog. She's a dog walker, she loves dogs, and because she doesn't have a place to stay, she ends up staying at his place, and you know, all good. But of course, having someone in his perfect ordered world starts messing with him a little bit, and Kennedy is determined to get him to open up and to lighten up a little bit. And so it is that story, as well as Reed dealing with his feelings towards his brother, who he loves but has been raised in competition with, and his stepfather, who is just very, very toxic. Kennedy is also working through some things. She is used to traveling a lot. She doesn't really set down roots anywhere, and she's planning on leaving Chicago and traveling. Her grandmother lives in Chicago in an assisted living facility, and so she still has ties here, and she's caught between this travel wandering bug and staying. And it was just a really great story. Like, I really fell for these two. One, because they have a mutual love of dogs, but also because they are both trying to find their place in the world. Also, I forgot to say when I was talking about Foreplayer, there is another content warning in there for mentions of childhood cancer. Meader is a cancer survivor. It is mentioned, it is historical off page, but it does get brought up a couple of times. Not in any great depth, just the fact that that had an impact on her relationship with her family in a positive way. So those are books that I have read this week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Otherwise, feel free to share something that you have been reading and enjoying down below. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't leave a comment, feel free to leave a computer emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.